we have a lot of faith and belief in God, not only in God and through His tzaddikim. It's something that we have, and we have to keep on passing and transmitting on to our children. Now Yitro, who is Moses' father-in-law, he hears about everything that has happened for the Jewish people. What did he hear? Well, he heard everything. And what was that? He heard about the plagues. He heard about that 10th plague also that no one ever imagined could happen. The slaying of the firstborn. Paro let them go. Then Paro chased them. The splitting of the sea. Coming out. The war of Amalek. There was no food. They had bread. And then they had no water. Then there came water. So many things happened. And Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, heard about everything that happened. And now he came to the Jewish people. What was he coming for? He was coming to convert. He was coming to jump on the bandwagon. Now, did he come after the Sinai revelation, Matan Torah, or before? This is a disagreement amongst the commentaries on the Torah. The vast majority of the commentaries say that Yitro came before Mount Sinai.
That's the way the Parashat says.
That's the way it's written. However, believe it or not, the Ibn Ezra says that actually it was after Mount Sinai. The Zera Shimshon himself throws in and he sounds like it's after Mount Sinai. But everyone else, for example, the Abarbanel, the Ramban, Nachmanides, the rest of them all say that it happened before Mount Sinai revelation. Very nice. What does the Torah tell us? Who was Yitro coming with? Yitro was coming with Moses' wife and 2 kids. Coming with the wife and 2 kids. Why is he coming with the wife and 2 kids? Weren't they with him? So let's take a step back and remind ourselves what happened. When Moses was told by God, go to Egypt and free the Jewish people, he did so, but something very interesting happened, and we spoke about this. That his wife gave birth right before, and that their travel date and days were in the middle of his circumcision days, the days that he should have been circumcised. And Moses said, we'll do the circumcision when we get to Egypt, because now God commanded me to go free and start the redemption process. And then the snake came, remember, swallowed him. They did the Brit Milah. And then he continued on his way. And while he was continuing on his way to go meet Aaron, came out, Aaron comes and sees him and says, my brother, it's been so many years. And then he goes like this. Who's that? He goes, that's my wife, my 2 kids. Wife and 2 kids? Send her back to her father's house. Why? Rashi tells us that, based on the Midrash, that Aaron tells Moses as follows. You and I are being sent by God to free this nation from slavery. And now you're going to add more that it may be subject to be slaves. We're going to free people. You're bringing more potential slaves? So the Siftei Chachamim, one of the commentators on Rashi, explains as follows. What was the issue? The issue was Tzipora. If Tzipora would have got to Egypt, she would have instantly been taken to be a slave. But not Gereshom and Eliezer, not Moses' sons. We know that the tribe of Levi was not enslaved. They never bought into the scheme of slavery. We've explained that one time. Now's not the time for that. But they never became slaves. They didn't start working for the state of Egypt, and therefore they never became slaves. They always stayed true to God and His mitzvot, and they kept their small, humble way of life. And that served them well. They never became slaves. But any other Jew and any other nation or guest, any other refugee that was in Egypt, became slaves. It wasn't only Jews that were slaves. There was others that were slaves also. There was an overwhelming amount of Jews right? They had 6, 12, 60 babies at a time. There were so many Jews, but there was others also. Tzipora coming from Midian, she would have been a slave. So what happens? Send her back, and send her with the 2 sons also. One of them's a newborn, one of them's also 1 year old, 2 years old. Moses, you got to work. The next 12 months is hard work for you. So he sent them back. And that's why Yitro is now coming with Tzipora and Moses' 2 sons. So they were missing in action for the past 12 months. They were with Yitro in Midian. Now comes something interesting. Yitro is telling Moses, I'm here with your wife and your 2 kids. I'll read you the verse in chapter 18, verse 6. Vayomer el Moshe, Yitro tells his son-in-law, Ani chotencha Yitro ba elecha, I, your father-in-law, Yitro, I'm coming to you. Veishtecha, along with your wife, ushne banea ima, along with your 2 sons. The Hiskuni, one of the main commentaries on our Chumash, he says, how does Yitro find an audience with Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu was the king of the Jewish people. He had high security. Maybe a couple years ago, it was possible for anyone to get an audience with Mr. Trump. Nowadays, it's almost impossible. We know where he lives. We know where he is. But you're not going to be able to go speak to him. Years ago, you were able to. It's different now. Years ago, Moses was more accessible. But now, even Yitro, his own father-in-law, can't just show up. Can't say, I'm here with your wife and kids. Who are you? Security check. Scanners. Everything okay? So what did he do, the Hiskuni says? He took a piece of paper and he wrote this verse. Ani chotencha Yitro ba elecha v'ishtecha u'shebanei ima. He wrote that on. I'm coming with your wife and your 2 kids. He rolled it up on an arrow and he shot a bow and arrow all the way to the White House. All the way by Moses' tent, the threshold. Moses comes out. He sees this arrow with a note. He reads the note, and that's how he knows his father-in-law is by the extremities, the outside of the camp, and he himself put his honor aside and went to greet his family. Straight. Normally, a king doesn't go out to greet people. How do we do? When someone comes to our house, we go to the door. We go out. We bring them in. We walk them out. We take steps out with them. A king doesn't do that. A king is sitting on his throne, and everybody comes to him. Moses was the king, and he went out to his queen. Very good. So that's a good thing that you brought up. That's a good thing that you brought up. There's many commentaries. Listen to this. There's many commentaries that say that when Moses sent Tzipora, for her own good, as we learnt, back to her father, he divorced her. Okay? We're not going to get into it now. Again, it's a difference of opinions, but it's a fact that he did divorce Tzipora. When exactly? Was it that first time, or was it more recent, right before Matan Torah? But either way, he did. Although we don't believe in celibacy as Jews, Moses was told by God to separate from his wife because of that very close spiritual connection he had with God. But nowadays, the proper way to live is to live married, as a man to a woman and a woman to a man. The greatest levels of holiness, purity, and connection to God can only be attained through marriage. Moses was, I don't want to say beyond, but he was beyond that. And again, none of us will never be the one that stands on Mount Sinai and brings the Jewish people the Torah. So that was specific to Moses. The Zera Shimshon asks a very nice question, and the question is based on Rashi's interpretation. Rashi says, you know why Yitro said it in this interesting sequence? I'm here, and your wife, and your kids. Why specifically that order? Because Yitro was saying, come out to see me, come and greet me, I'm your father-in-law. And if you're not going to come on my account, at least come for your wife's account. And if you're not going to come for your wife's account, well, at least come for your two sons' account. The Zera Shimshon says, why is Yitro even doubting that Moses would come and greet him? They didn't have a father-in-law syndrome, at least between the two of them. There was no mother-in-law syndrome. They were on great terms. So the Zera Shimshon asks, why was Yitro doubting if Moses was going to come and see him or not? It should be obvious. I'm here with your family. Shoot the bow and arrow. Why? If not for me, for your wife. If not for your wife, for your kids. So the Zera Shimshon gives two answers. I'm going to give the Kabbalistic answer that he gives first, and then there's a more basic answer. Okay? The Kabbalistic answer he gives, he quotes it from a very special sefer, which is called Asara Mamarot. Asara Mamarot was written by Rabbi Menachem Azaria Mipano, who also was an Italian Chacham, who was born in 1548 and died in 1620. So a couple hundred years before the Zera Shimshon, but also an Italian Chacham. He's referred to the Rama Mipano. And he says something fascinating. He says, let's look back in time. Who were the first two to fight in the creation of our world? Skipping over Adam and Eve. Okay? Cain and Hevel. Again, husband and wife, there's always a little bit of bickering, but that's not a real fight. We're talking a real fight. The real fight was between Cain and Hevel, the two brothers, Adam and Eve's own children. And Cain was jealous of Hevel. He engaged him in a philosophical conversation which turned into a disagreement, and he killed him. This is in chapter 4 in Genesis, first portion of our Torah. What happens? The Rama Mipano explains that Cain had to come back to fix what he did wrong. And he came back as a reincarnation as Yitro. Cain, the one who murdered Hevel, came back as Yitro. And Moses was a reincarnation of Hevel. So they were really brothers. They were father-in-law, son-in-law, but they are really brothers. Now this is something many of us have heard before. I'll tell you something which you might have not heard. You know who Tzipora is? No, Tzipora and Miriam were alive at the same time. Tzipora was the following. Cain was born with a twin sister. Hevel was born with two twin sisters. And that was the major issue that Cain had with Hevel. And that's what made him jealous of Hevel. I was born with one sister. Again, this is the beginning of mankind. The sister was his wife. Meaning they were born as twins, and that's who he married, that's who he had children with. And he looks at Hevel and he says, he's got two sisters. He's gonna have way more children than me. Why does he have that opportunity? And that was the root of the jealousy that Cain had for Hevel. The Rama Mipano says, you know who Tzipora is? Tzipora was that extra twin. It was the triplet. It was the third one. So now, look how he ties it up so beautifully with this question. The Talmud tells us of an individual who inadvertently kills somebody by mistake. Someone's doing some work outside, and he's on a ladder, and he drops his hammer, and someone, to his bad luck, is walking under. The hammer falls on the guy's head and kills him. By mistake. They didn't know each other. It wasn't planned. It was obvious that it was a mistake. The murderer who murdered by mistake has to go now to A'ir Miklat, a special city, a refugee city of the Levi'im. We've spoken about this. He has to stay there until the Kohen Gadol dies or until he dies. It's either or. He basically was going there for a long time. In the case that the Kohen Gadol dies, that inadvertent murderer, no matter how long he's been there for, does not go back to his original position. If he was a teacher, if he was a president, if he was a CEO, if he was the mayor, whoever he was, he's got to start down from the bottom and work himself up. Even though he was being let out from the city of refuge, still he has to climb his way back up as a new person in society. So now, Yitro is really Cain, and Moshe is Hevel. Yitro killed Moshe in their previous lives. Yitro was coming and saying, I am the father-in-law of the king. Let me in. Not in a loud way, in an arrogant way, but in a way, just let me in. Give me that, at least that basic amount of honor and respect. But then he thought, maybe he won't accept me. Maybe he won't come out to greet me. So if so, come and get us. Come greet us on behalf of your wife. And if you wouldn't even come out on behalf of your wife, obviously not because you don't love her, but because, listen to what the Ramami Pano says, but because she was the reason why I was jealous of you, so at least come for your children. So it's a three-pronged. Come out for me, Yitro says, but if not for me, because I can't go back to my status in society, because of our previous life, okay, at least for your wife. And if for your wife not, because she was the cause of the jealousy which led to me murdering you, Yitro says, come out for your innocent two children. And so Moses went out. It's fascinating. Okay? He ends off with one thing. You're going to look at me and say, Rabbi, it's beautiful, but reincarnation, this, come on, give me something, give me something. The Ramami Pano ends up and gives us something, and this will seal this clarification. If you look in this verse we're talking about, chapter 18, verse 6, it says, Vayomer el Moshe, Yitro says to Moses, Ani hotencha Yitro. I am your father-in-law, Yitro. Look at the first letters of those three words. Ani is Aleph. Hotencha is Het. Yitro, Yud. Achi. Achi. I am your brother. Brother in the previous life. Fascinating. That's according to the Kabbalah. That's how the Mekubalim explain at a deep level this pasuk. The Zera Shimshon now gives an alternative answer. An answer that maybe we could understand on every level. When the Jewish people left Egypt, we know that only 20% left. We said that last week. Hamushim ibnei Israel, only 1/5 of the Jews left Egypt. The rest, as we said last week, were not believers. There was more than just that fifth that left. There was the mixed multitude, Erev Rav. Some Egyptians who wanted to come along for the show. I mean, they've proved themselves. They've done 10 amazing miracles. Let's see where this story is going to end. They obviously weren't that great. So Yitro was now a little bit worried. He says, how is it that you are going to accept those mixed multitudes and you're not going to accept me? He was thinking, he was rationalizing. Well, if they could be accepted as converts and being part of the nation, of course my son-in-law should accept me. I'm doing it for the right reasons. But then he said, maybe not. Maybe they were accepted because it still wasn't perfect for the Jews. Even after the 10 plagues, it wasn't too perfect for them. They traveled for 3 days. They find themselves now a little disoriented. They don't know where to go. They're stuck by the water. Couple days later, Egypt is already there running after them. They go into the ocean to be saved. I don't know about you, but you have a much better chance of survival on land than in the water. So they're all going crazy. They go in the water, they come out, they think the Egyptians came out from the other side. They have no food, they have no water. They have Amalek wage war with them. Yet everything was taken care of, but it wasn't a smooth sail. But after all that was taken care of, it was already good. It was already proven for the Jewish people that they are very good and very popular. And Yitro said, maybe he won't accept me because now they're too popular and my intentions might not be, he might not think my intentions are for the right reasons. The Talmud tells us in the time of Mashiach, converts will not be accepted anymore. And why not? Why now yes, and why then no? It's for this exact same reason. When the Jews are popular, and when everything's going for them, and we see the hand of God doing everything for them, so then there's a big doubt to say, they're not converting for God, they're not converting for themselves. They're converting because it's in fashion. So Talmud says, the time of Mashiach, it's going to be so apparent, God's existence and His dominion is going to be so apparent, they're not accepted. Beforehand, of course, we examine, are they for real? Yitro was the most qualified convert the world has ever seen. He was the priest, imam, rabbi, monk of every other religion. Not only did he study every religion, he knew it at its best. He was Kohen Midyan. He was the priest of the whole country. If anyone was qualified to be a convert, it was him. It's like if you tell somebody, I don't like Diet Coke. You don't like Diet Coke? Have you ever tried Diet Coke, sir? Never. How could you not like it? You don't know what it tastes like. He was not only able to accept Judaism and know it's for the truth, he was able to disprove and know how everything else was not for real. Yet he still was scared that he would not be accepted because now it was maybe in fashion to be a Yehudi. It was in fashion to be part of Moses and the Bnei Israel. So that's why he says, I'm here. Come greet me, come accept me. If you don't, at least your wife and your kids, I know you'll come and greet me for that. Now I want to shift something which is fascinating for us to understand, and Yitro understood this. If we take and we look at Moses' life, it was a roller coaster. But this was the greatest height that he's ever got to. He's born as a Jewish boy. He's on the low. Jewish boy in the time of Egypt, sentenced to death to the Nile River. Okay, he gets raised in the palace. He's a prince. He meddles in with the Jewish-Egyptian conflict, and now he's told on, and now he has to escape for his life, and he's a refugee. He becomes king of Cush. He's up a little. Then the sons of the previous king get older, and they kick him out. He runs away. He's another refugee. He's on the run. He comes to Midian. He sits in jail for almost 10 years. Then he comes out, he marries Tzipor, and he's a simple shepherd. Who is he already? He's an ex-king, an ex-prince, but he's a shepherd. So his whole life he was fluctuating between 0 and 100, let's say. In the past 12 months, between ages 79 and 80, or better yet, 80, 81, that year, that 12 months, Moses went from here to here. He went from 100 to 1,000,000 in 12 months. He was the most powerful human being in the world at that time, and to even walk the face of this earth. He had God on dial demand. God spoke to him anytime, and he spoke to God anytime, and he was crying out loud. He brought the plagues upon Egypt. He was it. He was the most popular, the most famous, the most powerful. And Yitro was worried. Is he gonna even pay attention to me? Is he gonna pay attention to his wife and his kids? And that shows us Moses' greatness, his true greatness. That no matter how high he was, he remembered who he came from and he remembered his family. And he went out, as anyone should, to go greet his father-in-law and his wife and his kids after over a year not seeing them. Which to us we seem as though that should be so easy. Maybe not. Let me give you an example. How many people do you know that today are rich and famous and powerful? How do they treat their siblings? How do they treat their parents? Their old neighbors? People they grew up with? Moses is teaching us a lesson. He's teaching us, remember where you came from. That person who today is rich and famous, he wasn't always this way. Let's take the example of a wife, for example. And this works vice versa. A woman becomes rich and famous, husband too. They got married in their 20s and their 30s. And they were average people. And he did a couple of things to either become rich or either become famous or powerful, whatever the case is. And now he's it. You weren't it when you met your wife. You didn't meet your wife and you didn't marry your husband because of who they are today. You married them of who they were and the potential you saw, and you cultivated and you helped it. A husband towards a wife and a wife towards a husband. A child towards a parent and a parent towards a child. And siblings one to another have to always remember, where did we come from? Don't let yourself be greater than thou. We're all human beings. God blesses certain people with extraordinary amounts of success and blessing. But deflate yourself. Stay regular, stay low. It's for your own good. If anyone had reason to inflate himself, it was Moses. And he was the exact opposite. So this was exactly what Yitro was bothered with. He was worried. His whole life he was bouncing back and forth over here. And in the past 12 months, boom, he shot up. Is he still my son-in-law? Did I accept him to marry my daughter for who he was, and is he still that person? Or is he someone else? And Moses proved he was that same person, that same humble and amazing individual as he was. And this is an amazing lesson we can learn from the Zera Shimshon. Always stay and be yourself. Stay humble. Nowadays we call it stay down to earth. It's so attracting when you're down to earth. And it's disgusting when you're haughty. Everyone likes to be around people who are rich and famous. It feels cool to be the friend of the pop star, of the one that everyone's watching, of the one that has 1 million likes, 1 billion likes, right? But at the end of the day, you still have that feeling of envy, jealousy. Why am I not? There's no feeling of that if you're down to earth. If that famous person, if that powerful person is down to earth, everyone enjoys their company. Each of us in our own way. Bring ourselves down to earth. We are human beings after all. Flesh and bone. There's no such thing as blue blood. You cut yourself, you will bleed. And it is red, and it will stain. That's it. There's no such thing as blue blood. Not by kings, and not by the wealthy, and not by the powerful. No such thing as blue blood. Not a Cohen, not a Levi, not a king, the son of a king. We are all human beings. Moses himself had red blood.